RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD. If you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Wednesday, February 5th, and we'll be talking about the Super Bowl. The big game. Are we allowed to say it? Do we get copyright claim? Can we say the Super Bowl? Super Bowl coming up on Sunday. We got a big showdown slate. Chiefs versus the Eagles. So hit that thumbs up button anyway in the door. Give me those thummy thumbs. Give me those like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Hit everything you can on the screen. Join with me for this Wednesday for a little first look-see on the Super Bowl showdown slate on DraftKings is TJ Zwarich. And it's Super Bowl week. It's Super Bowl week tomorrow. Grant for some props. Bobby will be on Friday for some GPP strategy. But I want to call it a first look. But I mean, it's been a week and a half. I mean, like they have that week break in between. We've gotten the prices out for the big DFS slate. The number one question. I know this is supposed to be kind of like cash games or something like that. But I don't know. Showdown slates are not really like cash type of slates for me. I'm more GPP oriented. Do you think, TJ? Do you think this is the type of slate where the first place finisher in the Super Bowl big GPP is going to be solo?
I mean, it very rarely is, so probably not. But I don't think this slate is any different than any of the other showdown slates in terms of getting unique. Maybe it's even going to be a little bit easier because there might be a lot more casual people playing this. But in general, I don't think it's going to be any different really than a typical showdown slate. Probably won't be a solo win because it rarely is, but you never know.
Well, the top of the price range, we got Barkley, we got Hurts, we got Mahomes. We have our RotoGrinders projections up right now with the projected ownership. Obviously, you could use SimLabs as well. We'll be looking at that on Friday. But maybe the thing that stands out as far as projections are concerned, Saquon Barkley's $12K. Both the quarterbacks are $10K. Right? Hurts is $10.4K. Mahomes is $10K. And based on these projections, Barkley's overpriced. I mean, he has the third highest raw point projection on the slate, and obviously you need raw points. It's not an 8-game slate or anything. I mean, typically, you score 20 points, you're probably going to be in the winning lineup. Is Saquon Barkley at $12K? I mean, we're not even considering him even in the captain. Is that necessary? Like, would you be feeling nervous? I mean, I'd be feeling nervous on any handoff because Barkley could run for 65 yards on any play. Based on our projections, Barkley's actually going to be over-owned at $12K. But raw point-wise, I mean, Barkley could be in the winning lineup even with like 16 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think necessarily he's necessary because of that price. But having said that, I think he's still it is a tough run defense for the Chiefs. They're probably going to do whatever they can to shut him down and make Jalen Hurts beat him through the air. But I mean, everybody's probably tried to do that, and he still absolutely torches them. So I don't think he's absolutely necessary at that price because there's some pretty good double QB lineups you can build that don't have any Saquon Barkley in it. But having said that, I do think it's very doable to get up to him. I don't think there's anything wrong with playing Saquon Barkley on this slate. My favorite builds are picking a cheaper captain and so that I can load up on multiple of these expensive options in flex.
Well, I mean, if you do play Barkley, if you play a lineup with Barkley and both quarterbacks, you're going to have to play one of these, crappers at the bottom, and we'll get to those that are more viable and less viable to play. But I mean, the safest lineups have to be the double quarterback lineups. But the difference between the Chiefs and the Eagles, how their offenses are run, the value may be on the KC side, but like from a raw point, like condensement wise, I mean, I talked about it on the championship slate. And if you paid attention, maybe you won a good amount of money on Eagles onslaughts is that the Eagles offense is much more condensed than the Chiefs offense. So obviously, quarterbacks are quarterbacks. You got Mahomes, you got Kelsey, you got Worthy, you got Kareem Hunt scoring touchdowns. Pacheco could score a touchdown. You got Hollywood Brown there. Mahomes could throw to anyone. He could throw to Noah Gray, Juju, and Pirine, Watson, and who knows. Touchdown-wise, I think the Chiefs are much more spread out, but the Eagles, touchdown-wise, are much, much more condensed. Do you see the inkling of, like, if you play Hurts and Barkley, aren't you much more likely to just, like, you're going to get, like, all of the Eagles touchdowns. Like, you're going to get pretty much most of the Eagles offense. Yet, if you don't play Mahomes, it's quite possible that if you play, like, two Chiefs, if you play, like, Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown, I mean, we saw these past playoff slates that, like, oh, it's the Kelsey game. And then, Kelsey gets all the points and, like, no one else gets any points. Or you play Worthy and Kelsey, and then Hollywood Brown has 2 touchdowns. Are you much more comfortable building lineups actually with Eagles players? And then finding, I feel as if KC is more of the type of team that one of these cheap guys scores a touchdown and maybe 3 catches, 20 yards, maybe gets 10 points, than an Eagles crapper that maybe the Eagles are actually under-owned team here just because if the game, it's a 48.5 total. If the game does go over, I think the Eagles guys are much more likely to, like, if you're playing like a 4-2, like playing 4 Eagles, 2 Chiefs is much more likely to get there in that scenario than 4-2 the other way, even though value-wise, I mean, I obviously prefer the Chiefs players over the Eagles. Just it's much more difficult to pinpoint exactly what type of lineups you should build like that.
Yeah, exactly. I was just looking at a build where I think my favorite way of going about things is from like a close to it. Like, it doesn't say it's optimal in the sim percentages or anything like that, but I think my favorite way to build a small field single entry lineup where I'm not super concerned about ownership: Dallas Goedert at captain, play Barkley, Hurts, Mahomes, get all 3 of them, and then I don't really have to play too much disgusting value on the slate. I think the cheapest, I was looking at the super cheap stuff.
They're really, like, it's kind of weird, TJ. Like, the super cheap stuff, I mean, I expected there to be like many more ways to go with the super cheap stuff, but I really don't think so. I think this is that's why when I asked the first question of, like, do you think there's going to be a solo winner? I'm not sure if there is, because I mean, even guys like Noah Gray and Kenny Gainwell and even Juju's 2K, John Dotson's 1,600. Like, we don't have these like, I expected to have more guys that are like viable at like the 1K or less area, because you really, I mean, if you play Barkley, Hurts, and Mahomes, like, I mean, you can't even get Juju in that line. I mean, like, you can't even get you literally can't even get some of these players into your lineup. So, like, do you really want to play Johnny Wilson or Peyton Hendershot? Or, I mean, maybe like, when the value is like Calcaterra and Samaje Perine, like, the upside in these guys are just like, I hope Perine, I hope he catches 3 balls out of the backfield. And Calcaterra is like, I hope there's like a tight end corner in the end zone that they don't tush push. They fake a tush push and they give it to Calcaterra. Like, it's hard to see some of these guys being optimal at the really cheap price points, which to me kind of dissuades me from playing a lineup that has Barkley and both quarterbacks.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that if you do the cheap captain style lineup or the mid-range captain, you don't necessarily have to go all the way down there. If you are, I think the cheapest I'd want to go is Juju. I think he's my favorite of the Noah Gray, Gainwell, etc. range. But it's important to note as well, I don't think we've heard that Kenneth Gainwell is out of concussion protocol yet, unless I've missed that. As far as I know, he is still in the concussion protocol. And so if Gainwell is out, we don't have him projected yet, but I think Shipley is like 1.2 or something like that. I think, Shipley 2.4. He's actually above Gainwell. That's why I didn't see him, just because he's above Gainwell. Or sorry, because he's above 2K. But Shipley, I think, would maybe become in play at 2.4 if Gainwell is out. But even still, I think Juju would be my favorite of the group. I think if I'm getting to a kicker, I'd want it to be Harrison Butker, just because Jake Elliott has been really, really bad. And I actually think both defenses are in play too.
Well, I was going to say, it said, why don't you do the least fun lineup that you can? I mean, I think this is more for GPP. The least fun lineup is you play one kicker, one of the defenses, and I don't think many people are playing a lot of the kickers and the defenses. But on the offensive side, okay, so let's go through like on a salary scale. And we're talking about more smaller field single entry stuff. On Friday, we'll talk about the large field stuff where you can do weird ass things. How would you rank the 10K plus players as far as if you could only play one, which one would you play and rank them from Barkley, Hurts, Mahomes? And regardless of captain or not, but like, who's the priority between Barkley, Hurts, and Mahomes? If you can only play one, you can play a lineup with one of them in single entry. Are you building a lineup with Mahomes? Are you building a lineup with Hurts? Are you building a line with Barkley? And so Barkley with no quarterbacks.
The RotoGrinders projections will say optimally the route is Mahomes. The Blitz projections will say optimally the route is Hurts. I still think my favorite is Barkley.
He obviously has the highest upside. I mean, he could rush for 150 yards or whatever. I mean, yeah, obviously. So you'd put Barkley 1, Mahomes 2, Hurts 3. But
I think you need Barkley or Hurts in every lineup. So I would go Barkley, Hurts, Mahomes.
Okay. Then how about from the Chiefs, the more expensive Chiefs receivers? And let's just count anything above the kickers. So we're talking about Xavier Worthy at 8K, Travis Kelce at 9K, Hollywood Brown at 5,400. Do you have to play Kelce or Worthy? Can you get away with Hollywood Brown? Or you take a look at the Eagles receivers, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. AJ Brown at 9,600, Devonta Smith at 7,400. How would you rank these guys? Obviously, price-wise, we got like Goddard and Brown, in the 5K range. But like these more expensive guys, Brown, Kelce, Worthy, Smith. How would you rank? Like, how often do they appear in your single entry lineup? What would you prioritize?
So probably the opposite approach as I did with the super expensive ones, where I prioritize the Eagles. I'd want Hurts or Barkley because, like you said, one of those guys is likely going to be occupying all the touchdowns, whether Barkley gets in from a little further out or Hurts sneaks it in. If the Eagles are scoring touchdowns, they're going to be the ones involved. I feel the less so that about AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. And so here, I think I'd prioritize it. Kelce and Worthy's really just a flip of a coin for me. If I can afford Kelce, I'd go Kelce. If I can't, I'm totally fine with Worthy. I think I'd prefer Kelce, though. So Kelce number 1, Worthy 2, Devonta Smith 3, AJ Brown 4.
Okay, how about between in this mid-range, Hunt, Goddard, Brown, and Pacheco?
Goddard is going to be priority 1 for me at 5,800. I think he's my favorite play on the entire slate, either at captain or in flex. I want to make sure I'm getting some Goddards. I would go Goddard 1, Kareem Hunt 2, just because I think he's going to be fairly quite involved in this one. If they get near the goal line, there's a good chance he's scoring a touchdown. Hollywood Brown 3. I would make sure I have one of Kelce, Worthy, or Hollywood Brown in every single lineup. And Pacheco a very distant 4th.
Okay, would you rather play DeAndre Hopkins or one of the kickers of defenses?
Harrison Butker would be priority 1. And it feels gross, but I think I actually like the Eagles and Chiefs defense is better than DeAndre Hopkins. Like, DeAndre Hopkins is more of a Friday conversation for me, whereas I think he's a really good large field GPP play. But if we're talking trying to be optimal single entry, small field, I think it's one of the defenses. I'd probably rank it Butker, Eagles defense, Chiefs defense, Hopkins, distant fifth, Jake Elliott.
How about guys like Gainwell, Gray, and Juju? Like we could go all the way down. I would anything underneath the defenses. Would you, in a non-Barkley lineup, would you take a shot on? I mean, assuming that he passes the concussion protocol, which it's the Super Bowl, I think he's going to do it. Playing Gainwell in a non-Barkley lineup and playing Noah Gray in a non-Kelsey lineup.
I'm less apt to do the Gainwell one just because the only way he ends up anywhere close to optimal to me is if Barkley actually gets injured, and so that's still just like a very large field, couple out of 150 type scenario. Gray, I'd be more likely to than Kelsey. I like Gray a lot more earlier before Hollywood Brown came back because they've ran a lot less two tight end sets since Hollywood Brown came back, so Gray hasn't been on the field as often. I would put Gray second to Juju Smith-Schuster. I think Juju is number one of this group. Noah Gray number two, and I wouldn't go lower than Juju.
So you have no interest in playing Dotson, Perine, Calcaterra, Justin Watson, Nico Remigio. You do the Chiefs defense and Nico Remigio and hope for a return touchdown. So you're seriously you're just not interested in anyone below Juju.
No, I think if you wanted to go Samaje Perine, I wouldn't call you stupid. But I think as low as I want to go is Juju.
Jahan Dotson has been on the field a bunch. I mean, I know what is the thing? He's run like 75 routes and gotten 0 targets. Like, I mean, for someone to be on the field often as he is, I mean, he literally projects 1.2 points, which is like awful. You don't think guys like Dotson and Calcaterra have a shot at
like large field GPPs? You're trying to win $1 million. Absolutely, you can play Jahan Dotson, but like he's not somebody that I would ever.
Single entry, you don't want to take a lot of his range of outcomes are zeros.
Correct. In 150 lineups, in trying to win $1 million in the big $25 contest this week. You could play Peyton Hendershot. You could play Johnny Wilson. You could play Nico Remigio. You could play Justin Watson, Samaje Perine, Jahan Dotson, Calcaterra, all of them.
Yeah, not all in the same lineup, though. Don't do that.
Not all in the same lineup. No. But you can basically play your Barkley, Mahomes, and Hurts lineups all in the same lineup. Play Xavier Worthy with a cheap captain like a Goddard, and then just rotate all of these cheap players. But I would only be doing that in a super large field thing. I wouldn't be taking any of those shots in single entry.
So in single entry, you're rank your captains. I mean, from a cheaper captains, more expensive captains. Our projections would say that the best captain is Patrick Mahomes at 10K, but I think it could be close between him and Hurts. And then if you're going to play a cheaper, Worthy is priced per point per dollar wise, it would say, and then Goddard, like that's a lineup HQ, and with our projections, it would rank this as, from a captain perspective, Mahomes 1, Hurts 2, Worthy 3, Goddard 4. Do you have any reason to do any? And then Kelsey 5. Is that kind of? I mean, is that kind of what you see as well?
I do think it's interesting that according to our Sims tool, Barkley has the second highest optimal rates, and he actually has the best leverage rated captain on the slate. So when we're talking GPPs, I think putting Barkley in that captain position and then loading up on some mid-range and cheapies, I think is interesting. But my favorite captains would go Dallas Goedert, number 1, Travis Kelce, number 2, Hollywood Brown, 3, Mahomes, 4, Barkley 5.
Which means AJ Brown at captain is going to be the winner.
Probably.
Right. I think with GPPs, I think the captain spot, you can play a lot. I think for what we lack at the cheaper salary, I think captain could be up for grabs. I think, you can make a case to play a lot of people at captain.
We're projecting Kareem Hunt to be 3% owned in the captain position. There's absolutely a world where he punches in 2 touchdowns, and playing him at captain allows you to forward all these other expensive pieces and gets there at super duper low ownership. A kicker like Butker can end up getting there. Hollywood Brown if he catches a long one. Goddard if he catches a couple touchdowns. Hell, DeAndre Hopkins if he catches a touchdown or 2 can end up being the optimal captain on this slate. When I take shots at cheap captains, it has less to do with who the cheap captains are and more to do with if I want to spend up to a lot of the expensive guys on the slate. Sometimes it's the Bills versus, I don't know, another team that doesn't have all that many spend ups that we want to get to. And it's Josh Allen is my only priority up here. So I'll just play him at captain and then in all of my lineups, and then I'll mix and match these other ones. But in this, I feel very similarly between Barkley, Hurts, Mahomes. Plus, I want to get to as much Kelsey and Worthy as I can. So that's why I need to go cheap captains in all of these, because I don't see all that many scenarios where one or less of Barkley, Hurts, Mahomes end up being optimal in this spot.
Well, I also believe that if you're going to go with cheaper captains and spend most of your salary, that's better in smaller field contests than larger field contests. And we'll talk more about that on Friday, because there's just a lot more lineups that could duplicate you than in small. If you're playing 1,000-person field, you're playing that Eagles defense captain spot, it may only be 4 lineups that have Eagles defensive captain out of 1,000, and then there's 6 combinations of that, and you're unique at least. But when you're playing a contest that has 300,000 entries, it's Eagles defense is not going to be owned that much at captain, but it's still going to represent 2,000 lineups, and the rest of the combinations, if there's only 6 of them, next thing you know, you're how did this lineup get duplicated 120 times? It's well, that's all the Eagles defense captain lineups, because that has Barkley and Hurts and Mahomes. It has all, unless you're going to leave $5K salary on the table, it's going to have the same people. It's going to be, oh, look, I can fit everyone in. So to me, that's much more of a small field type of construction than a large field one. But TJ, anything else that we should look out for the slate when it comes to a cash smaller field type of mindset?
The one thing last tidbit I want to touch on for the large field stuff is it depends who you are as well, because
I'm me, TJ, I'm me.
I know you're you, but we got for all the viewers as well, right? For all the viewers, if you are playing 150 lineups in a $25 contest trying to win $1 million, all you care about is being unique. All you care about is being different and trying to build those different types of lineups. But say you're building 3 in the Millie Maker or 5 in the Millie Maker, and that's expensive. That is far beyond what your bankroll typically goes, but you're trying to win you're trying to make the big game a little bit more exciting. There are far worse things than splitting $1 million with 120 of your best friends, because you're probably still, when you consider all those other positions going into it, going home with $15,000-$20,000 almost. And so while I agree with you 100%, to get different in a large field GPP to get first, you're not going to want to spend all the salary in those lineups, because there are going to be a lot of people who are doing it. But if you like the build, you think that's the way the game is going to go, you're in some small field stuff, you're in that as well, all of a sudden it doesn't look as bad of thinking hey, I think this is the script. And yes, it's going to be duplicated, but I still get to win 5 figures from this, and I'm a guy that typically plays $20, $50 a night. All of a sudden that is looking pretty good as well. So I think of the showdowns a little bit differently than most in that regard, I think, because first is first. Like if you play with a small bankroll, it's while $1 million is better, that the big type of win of splitting it can still be pretty beneficial for somebody who plays low dollar. Regarding the optimal stuff, even though the Sims are going to say that like Barkley, Mahomes, Hurts are the three guys you want to be going with in optimal style lineups, I think if you're picking one of them, you're going Mahomes. But I think the best thing you can do for single entry contests in this one is go to a guy like a Dallas Goedert in the mid tier, and then spend up for at least two of Mahomes, Hurts, and Barkley in your lineup.
You mentioned the script. Do you have the script? People on Twitter say that it's all scripted. This game is going to be, the Chiefs are obviously going to win. The referees are going to make sure of it. They've scripted it, right? Someone's going to point out they already had T-shirts made, which they do for both teams. So that isn't like it's not
We've all seen the documentaries where they ship the team that doesn't win to a third world country and they just let them do whatever they want with the shirts. And there's people walking around with like Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl winner over the Patriots and the Patriots perfect undefeated season and things like that. So
imagine living in that universe. Imagine being in a small town in the middle of nowhere in Africa. They've no television or nothing or anything like that. You visit there, and all it is like that type of merchandise, and it's like you get Knicks NBA championship gear with Bill, like the Knicks and the Bills. It's like, what universe? It's like you stepped into like bizarro world where all these people actually think those teams won, right? Even though they probably can't read the words on the shirt or whatever. But the point that I was making before is that TJ, if you have the script, I mean, you'll let people know, right? You talked about scripting your lineup. So you're so high on Dallas Goedert. I'm getting a sense that maybe, because they think that you're in Saskatoon's Canada, you're so removed from everywhere else that the script is safe with you. And maybe you took a little peek, and Dallas Goedert got 2 touchdowns on Sunday.
Yeah, I talked to my friend. I don't know if you've seen all the chaos on Twitter, but I talked to
the same insider that Greg has with Terry
Talked to my friend Greg Ehrenberg, also over at Stochastic, and got the inside scoop for the game. No, but we talk about the script. To me, the most important thing for a showdown lineup, outside of when you're just trying to get unique, throwing darts in large field stuff, is for your lineup to tell a story. Doesn't make sense. Correlate it together, not necessarily of QB with all of my receivers, but if this team gets ahead early, this is how the game will look. That to me is the most important thing to do in a showdown lineup for single entry, things like that. In terms of how I do think the game is going to go, genuinely, I think this should be a close game. 2 great teams. It is hard to bet against Mahomes. But at the beginning of the playoffs, at the beginning of the season, really, the Eagles were my pick to win the Super Bowl. And so I'm just going to stick with that just so I can say that I was right.
Okay, doke. Well, if you have the script, post it in the comments. I want to know what the script is. I want to know what the hell's going on. So let me know in the comments. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Give me those thumbs. Hit the subscribe button if you're new. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live tomorrow. I'll be on with Grant. We'll be going over a ton of weird Super Bowl props. Hopefully Grant has a bunch of weird ones that we could look at. Maybe he has the script. Maybe Grant has the script. And then Bobby will be on Friday to try to make some maybe weirder lineups. Like we'll see some line. Can we play these 2 people together? Can we leave 4K on the table here? Can we play, this guy and the captain without the quarterback? We'll be talking about some weird stuff for Showdown on Friday. And then just a programming note, just to let people know that this show is kind of going away after this week, and I will be doing SimLabs related videos moving forward for NBA and MLB, so it will not be a live show, but you'll still see my face. You'll see the thumbnail. You'll see my face. It'll be a SimLabs related video Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then I'll be on live on Fridays to take your questions. So plan for that. I'll be talking about that tomorrow and Friday to let people know that programming note. So I'm here. I'm here for the time being for this week on weekdays, 11 o'clock Eastern, talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.